Before 8, we'll continue to reflect on that speech at the end of the Conservative Party conference. I do tell you, if you have had, and I understand many of you had, if you have had a belly full of politics, there are plenty of different stories coming up later in the show, I assure you. Not less the possibility, of course, there could be a nurses' dispute. But let's come back to that speech yesterday, and welcome to the conversation, Conservative MP and indeed Chairman of the Conservative Party, Jake Berry, who joins me now. Thank you for coming on, Chairman. Some of the listeners to my show are a little surprised. They say that in one instance a member of the Lib Dem Party and a businessman, and another a member of the Labour Party and a businesswoman, but apparently they're anti-growth, the same as Extinction Rebellion, according to the Prime Minister. Why would that be? Good morning.
Well, good morning. Well, I think I know what the Prime Minister was talking about in her speech was that we have an ambitious plan to grow the economy in this country. I get that some people think that is a break from the norm, that going from the highest tax burden in the last 70 years and ever-increasing sort of reliance on taxpayers to pay for public services, we are saying, well, actually there is a different way. We need to grow the economy. We need to be a higher growth, lower growth economy.
Yes.
And people who have been part of that cosy consensus, and in fact some people who've actually both written and implemented it in the past, disagree with us.
So the one particular person who runs a series of estate agents in the home counties and is a member of the Lib Dem Party, and he's grown his business. He now employs 17 people at 3 different branches. He's anti-growth.
If I'm honest, I don't know the individual you're talking about, but I think what the Prime Minister set out in her speech isn't just why we are going to grow the UK economy, but our motivation for doing it. And I think what your listeners will want to hear is that they have a government who is growing the economy so we can deliver world-class public services, and also on the side of families, so we can do things like pay for the huge energy intervention we've done, not just for homes, but actually for businesses as well, to ensure that we can have a country that works for everyone.
You obviously know her well. Why would it appear, Liz Truss so unpopular?
Well, I think as a Prime Minister, she acknowledged that on the 45% tax rate, that she had listened to the British public. She acknowledged that, and she gets it. She's changed her position. She's also had a difficult start to her premiership. She's only 30, in fact, she's less than 30 days in. And I'm sure as people sort of listen to and digest her vision for Britain in terms of this speech and her motivation for creating growth in all parts of our country, that they will support her.
But she's even more unpopular than Jeremy Corbyn ever was, or indeed Boris Johnson at his lowest point. There's a mountain to climb, isn't there?
Well, look, one of my jobs as Conservative Party chairman is to go out there and ensure that we do get our message out, because I think our core message about how we want the British people to succeed is one that will be popular, because in truth, the British people want their government to succeed because they want to succeed in their own lives.
How would you, as you reflect on the events of the last 3 or 4 days in Birmingham, how do you think the party conference went, Chairman?
Well, I think we had a good, positive conference. I mean, it's my first one as chairman, so I can't reflect on being chairman at any other. But if you talk to delegates there, I think everyone had a good time. People were safe. People enjoyed the policy debates that we had. But I don't think the Prime Minister's speech was focused on people in the hall. I think it was focused on talking to the great British public about her vision for Britain.
But I ask you more generally about the conference. So one that effectively begins with a screeching U-turn by the Chancellor is a, quotes, good and positive conference, is it, Chairman?
Well, I think people will be happy that the government is listened to their concerns about the 45p tax rate and acted. I think we'd be having a very different conversation this morning if it hadn't have acted. It was 5% of a huge growth plan for Britain that is designed to help every family in this country. And frankly, if we were still talking about that 5%, which the public sort of said they were unhappy with, we wouldn't be talking about the 95%. That means for every family and household in this country, we're taking action to ensure that we can help them with their energy bills. We have a plan to grow our economy so businesses can take that next step and invest. And the reason we want businesses to do that isn't just some academic exercise in sort of like an A-level economics essay. I must admit I didn't do economics at A-level, but it's like that. It's about transforming the lives of people in this country. So the reason we want businesses to succeed is so your listeners at home can get a pay rise, so they can have more cash in their pocket. And they'll see the start of that this month when their pay slip drops through the letterbox, and they will see that the Prime Minister and our government has already given every single working person in this country a cut in their national insurance, and next year they'll see a cut in the basic rate of income tax, and that's what this government is about.
How will we know, when might we see this idea for growth is working?
Well, the Prime Minister in her speech again set out that, I don't think it will be a surprise to many of your listeners to know that this is going to be a difficult winter. We have a war on the soil of Europe in the Ukraine with a violent illegal war. We have challenges around global supply chains still coming into our economy from COVID. We have global inflation. So this is going to be a difficult winter, but I hope and believe that people will start to see next year that our growth plan is turning the country around.
How divided is the Conservative Party?
Well, I can't really tell you, because lots of people who talk about the party being divided talk about anonymous briefings to journalists. So you're probably better praised than me, because they are anonymous. But what I would say is that, I think colleagues saw yesterday that when the going gets tough, the trust gets going. And in an absolutely brilliant speech, I think she has set out a plan that colleagues across the Conservative Party, whichever part of the broad church of conservatism they find themselves in, they can get behind, and I would urge them to get behind.
But, Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely right. To get going, many of your colleagues would love to see her get going out of the door of number 10. They don't think she's competent. They don't think she's up to it. Even some serving ministers actually say that her policies aren't right. And we wake up to Nadine Dorries, who very recently was in the cabinet, saying you must U-turn or face an election wipeout.
Yeah, I've seen that article by Nadine. I must admit, I'm quite good friends with Nadine. I think she's a very fine individual, a very fine Conservative. But quite a lot of what we have done hasn't been just about cutting people's taxes. Though, of course, people are getting the cut in income tax. Quite a lot of it is, action on energy bills. I'm not sure that Nadine Dorries would like to see, energy bills go up to £6,000 per household because of the action we have taken. They will now on average be £2,500. We have, of course, cancelled the increase in corporation tax, and I know that where she was part of a cabinet that supported that. I personally think that was the wrong thing to do for our economy. I think when businesses face a really tough winter ahead of them, the one thing they really don't need, when we're asking them to support families, make those investments, give people those pay rises, the one thing they really don't need is a 6% increase in business taxes. And I've seen some of the comments by Nadine. I don't understand some of them, and some of them I don't agree with.
What can you say to my listeners who are in receipt of benefit welfare payments, UC, whatever you want to call it? They're very, and I'm sure they're calling my colleagues on LBC as well, they are very nervous, Mr. Chairman. They want to know what's the situation going to be. Are their payments going to be frozen? Are they going to rise in line with inflation? What is the plan? How come we don't know?
Well, the reason we don't know is that I'm sure you would accept that the government must make a decision based on facts. The situation with benefits is that some benefits, as a matter of law, are uprated in line with inflation, and other benefits it is a decision of the government. They do tend to be those out-of-work benefits to which you refer. But the inflation figures that are used are the inflation figures for the autumn. The government actually doesn't have those figures at the moment. So rather than people asking us, rather than people expecting us to guess, we've got to wait until those figures are available, at which point the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions and the Chancellor will will decide how those benefits should be uprated. That will come to the Cabinet and they will be discussed, and a decision will be announced in due course. You simply cannot make a decision on figures you do not currently have.
Well, how much money will easing the cap on bankers' bonuses bring in?
Well, that will become all the figures relating
Mr.
to.
Chairman, you don't have those figures.
Well,
you've just said you can't make a decision on figures you don't have. I've asked you how much money is lifting the cap going to bring in. You've honestly replied you've no idea, which is the truth.
No, that's not what I said. If you actually let me answer the question.
What will it bring in? I do apologise. What will it bring in?
So, the figures relating to the cap on bankers' bonuses will be available when the Chancellor makes his medium-term economic plan. But that is a matter for a private business. How much a private business chooses to pay people and in what variation and what form is a matter for that business. That is not something that is going to cost the taxpayer money. We are having a debate quite correctly about how much it may bring in. That is not the same thing as spending taxpayers' money on their behalf. The truth is, how much may it bring in? Well, I hope that it will bring in as much as possible to the coffers of the taxpayer, because I want to use that money, like we have already done, to do things like provide support with people's energy bills and pay benefits to support the British people in what is a difficult time.
But to those who say you can bring in policies for bankers, probably rich bankers, but you can't for people who are on benefits, you see, don't have the figures there. I mean, how would you justify that?
Oh, no, sorry. I think the point I make, I know you don't accept it, but I will just say it again. I think the point I make, there is a difference between spending taxpayers' money on their behalf and regulation relating to how much private businesses should pay their employees.
My taxes
and
aren't
actually,
paying for that. I get that. But it is government policy.
You are not paying for it.
I'm not paying
I think there is a fundamental difference.
No, I get it.
I don't play guessing games when it comes to using taxpayers' cash to pay benefits. I don't think the government should. We should be driven by data. I think it is a different point with respect.
No, of course, absolutely. Of course, I take that on board. Lastly, you described the Prime Minister yesterday as the yes Prime Minister. Mr. Berry, what was going on there? Were you channeling When Harry Met Sally?
No, it certainly was not. I was actually channeling yes Minister, yes Prime Minister. It sort of maybe showing my age a bit more. Well, look, the Prime Minister, during the leadership election, clearly set out some things she was going to do. Cut national insurance. Every family will see that in their payslip this month. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at my own jokes. I'm trying to stop laughing at it. He said, if you're going to deal with energy bills, we have done that. Sorry, Nick. We have done that. And she said she was going to, go for growth, and she's done that. So I was rather pointing out. I was rather pointing out that it's unusual to have politicians who say something and then go on and do it. I think for many years your listeners will be frustrated of politicians who said one thing and done another.
I've got the context now, I understand, and I'm grateful to you. Thank you. Conservative Party Chairman Jake Berry appearing here on LBC, where at 1 minute after 8 the news is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock.